Red warning lights painted the control room in an angry glow as sparks flew from damaged circuits. Nira pressed her hands against the navigation console, trying to steady herself as another explosion rocked the ship. Around her, the crew worked, desperately to keep their massive colony vessel from falling apart completely. "Life support is failing on decks 12 through 15, reported Talo from his communications station. His blue skin had turned pale with fear. "We have maybe 6 hours before the air recyclers shut down completely." Nira closed her eyes for a moment. 6 hours to save 50,000 sleeping colonists. 6 hours before families, children, scientists, and traders all suffocated in the cold darkness of space. The engine failure had been sudden and complete. One moment they were traveling peacefully toward their new home world, and the next moment they were drifting helplessly between the stars. "What about the distress beacon?" she asked. "Still broadcasting on all standard frequencies," Talo replied. "But we're too far from any major shipping lanes. The nearest Altrian patrol ship is 3 days away, 3 days. They would all be dead in 6 hours." Through the main viewing screen, Nira could see the stars spinning slowly as their ship tumbled without power. Somewhere out there were her people's enemies, raiders and pirates who would love nothing more than to find a helpless colony ship full of valuable cargo and potential slaves. She shuddered at the thought. "Wait," Talo said suddenly, his voice rising with excitement. "I'm picking up something on long-range sensors." Nira hurried over to his station. "Rescue ships!" Talo's face fell. "No! Multiple vessels approaching fast! Military configuration." He paused, checking his readings again. "It's a Kravik battle fleet." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of failing systems. Everyone knew about the Kraviks. They were the nightmare species that haunted the Outer Rim worlds. Tall, powerful, and completely without mercy. They took what they wanted and enslaved or killed anyone who got in their way. Finding a disabled colony ship would be like discovering a treasure chest floating in space. "How long before they reach us?" Nira asked quietly. 4 hours, Talo whispered. 4 hours. Less time than they had air remaining, but it wouldn't matter. The Kraviks wouldn't wait for them to suffocate peacefully. They would board the ship, wake up all the colonists, and drag them away to a life worse than death. Nira looked around the bridge at her crew. These were good people, scientists and engineers who had volunteered to help establish a new colony. They had families sleeping in the passenger sections, children who would never see their new home world. "Keep broadcasting the distress signal," she ordered. "All frequencies." "Even the restricted channels?" Talo asked. Nira hesitated. The restricted channels were reserved for dangerous species, worlds with high gravity and violent weather that produced aggressive, unpredictable people. The galactic community avoided contact with these so-called Deathworlders for good reason. They were known to be unstable and violent. But what choice did they have? "All frequencies," she repeated firmly. Talo's fingers moved across his console. "I'm opening the emergency channels now, broadcasting our position and status to anyone who might be listening." "Including the Deathworlder frequencies?" asked Ross, the chief engineer. "Especially those," Nira said. "If there are any violent species out there who might want to fight the Kraviks, this would be a good time to find them." Ross looked uncomfortable. "But what if they're just as bad as the Kraviks? What if we're asking one group of monsters to save us from another?" "Then at least we tried," Nira replied. "I won't let 50,000 people die without fighting for them." The distress signal went out across all channels, carrying their coordinates and a simple message. "Colony ship disabled. 50,000 civilians aboard. Kravik raiders approaching, requesting immediate assistance from any vessel capable of providing aid." On his console, Tallow watched the signal spread outward at light speed, racing through space toward anyone who might be listening. Most of the galaxy would ignore a distress call from such a remote location. The few who did respond would probably arrive too late to matter, but somewhere out there, the message was being received by beings that the rest of the galaxy preferred to forget existed. Creatures from worlds so harsh and dangerous that they had evolved into living weapons, species that fought for entertainment and considered warfare an art form. "Signal sent," Tallow reported. "Now we wait." Nira returned to her command station and opened a ship-wide communication channel. Throughout the vessel, her voice echoed in corridors where maintenance crews worked frantically to extend their remaining life support. In the passenger sections, automated systems kept the colonists in deep sleep, unaware that death was approaching from two different directions. "This is your captain speaking," she said calmly. "We have sent distress signals on all available frequencies. Help may be coming, but we must prepare for the possibility that hostile forces will reach us first. All security personnel report to your stations. All civilian crew members should move to the central sections of the ship and await further instructions." She closed the channel and slumped back in her chair. Through the viewing screen, she could see distant lights that might be the approaching Kravik fleet, or they might just be stars. At this distance, it was impossible to tell. Any response. "2-hour distress call?" she asked. Tallow shook his head. "Nothing yet. But the Deathworlder frequencies are different. I'm not sure we would recognize a response even if we got one." "What do you mean?" "Their communication protocols are strange, very direct and aggressive. No formal diplomatic language. If they do answer, it might not sound like what we expect." Nira nodded. She had read the classified reports about Deathworlder species. They were described as primitive but technologically advanced, peaceful but incredibly violent when threatened. The reports were full of contradictions because so few people had actually encountered them and lived to write about it. Maybe that was about to change. The next 3 hours passed slowly. Systems continued to fail throughout the ship. The air grew thinner and staler as the recyclers struggled to keep up with demand. Emergency lighting flickered and dimmed as power reserves drained away, and still no response to their distress call. When Tallow finally spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. "I have them on visual now," he said. 12 Kravik warships. They'll be here in 30 minutes. Nira closed her eyes and tried not to think about what would happen next. Deep in the Wolf 359 system, a small monitoring station drifted silently among the asteroids. Inside its cramped control room, Lieutenant Hayes sat alone during the night shift, listening to the endless chatter of galactic communications. Most of it was boring commercial traffic, shipping manifests, and routine diplomatic messages between various alien governments. But tonight was different. The emergency signal came through on frequency band 7, the channel reserved for species that most of the galaxy considered too dangerous to contact directly. Hayes straightened up in his chair as the message played through his speakers. A colony ship in distress. 50,000 civilians. Raiders approaching, and they were asking for help from anyone willing to fight. Hayes grabbed his communicator and called Admiral Stone's private quarters aboard the flagship Retribution, currently docked at the main naval base. "Admiral, we have an emergency situation," Hayes said when Stone answered. "What's the situation, Lieutenant?" "Distress call from an unknown species called Altrians. Colony ship disabled, 50,000 civilians aboard. Hostile raiders approaching." Their position. There was a pause. "How far out are they?" Hayes checked his calculations. 18 hours at maximum jump speed, sir." "And the raiders?" "Unknown species called Kraviks. Intelligence database shows them as aggressive slavers operating in the outer rim sectors." Another pause. Longer this time. Then Stone's voice came. Back, hard and determined. "Contact all ships of the Third Fleet. Emergency deployment in 30 minutes. I want every captain in the briefing room in 20. Hayes felt his heart rate increase. The Third Fleet was humanity's most powerful naval force, 47 ships designed for one purpose: overwhelming destruction of hostile forces. They hadn't been deployed together since the Centauri liberation 5 years ago. Sir, are you sure? These aliens aren't human. We don't owe them anything. Lieutenant, Stone said coldly, innocent people are about to be murdered by slavers. That's all I need to know. Get me those ships. 20 minutes later, the briefing room aboard Retribution filled with human naval officers. Captain Torres, Stone's second-in-command, studied the tactical display showing the Altrian ship's position. Captain Mills, the fleet's xenobiology specialist, reviewed what little information they had about both alien species. "What do we know about these Altrians?" asked Captain Ross, commander of the heavy cruiser Thunderbolt. "Peaceful trading species," Mills replied. "No military capabilities. They're basically space merchants and colonists. Think of them as galactic farmers trying to start a new life on a frontier world." "And the Kraviks?" Mills' expression darkened. "Predatory species. They've been raiding Outer Rim colonies for decades. They capture civilians and sell them as slaves to mining operations. Intelligence suggests they've enslaved over 2 million beings in the last 10 years. "Slavers," Torres said with disgust. "I hate slavers." Admiral Stone entered the room, and everyone stood at attention. He was a tall, gray-haired man who had earned his rank through 30 years of naval combat. His face showed the kind of calm determination that had made him legendary among human forces. "Gentlemen, we have a situation that requires immediate action," Stone began. 50,000 innocent civilians are about to be captured by slavers. They sent out a distress call asking for help from anyone willing to fight. That means us. Captain Walsh, the fleet's medical officer, raised her hand. "Sir, these aren't humans. Why are we risking our ships and crews for aliens we've never met?" Stone looked at her steadily. "Because it's the right thing to do, Captain. Because when someone calls for help against murderers and slavers, we answer. Because that's what humans do." The room fell silent. Everyone understood. This was more than just a rescue mission. This was about who they were as a species, what they stood for in a galaxy full of predators and victims. "Questions about our mission?" Stone asked. Torres studied the tactical display. "Sir, we'll be heavily outnumbered. Intelligence shows 12 Kravik warships against our 47. Stone smiled grimly. "Captain, when have odds like that ever stopped us before?" "Never, sir," Torres replied with a matching smile. "Good. Launch sequence begins immediately. We jump in formation, maximum speed. Engineering tells me we can reach them in 18 hours if we push the engines hard." Captain Ross frowned. "What about the civilian ship's life support?" "Intelligence estimates they have 6 hours of air remaining," Stone said. "We'll be cutting it close." "And if we're too late?" Stone's voice turned ice cold. "Then we make sure every single Kravik raider pays for what they've done." The captains filed out to return to their ships. Within 30 minutes, the Third Fleet was powering up for departure. 47 warships ranging from small destroyers to massive dreadnoughts, each one carrying enough firepower to level a city. Aboard Retribution, Stone stood on the bridge, watching his fleet prepare for jump. Through the viewing ports, he could see the other ships taking formation around his flagship. Lightning, Thunderbolt, Vengeance, Fury, dozens of others with names that reflected humanity's approach to warfare. "All ships report ready for jump," reported his navigation officer. Stone nodded. "Signal the fleet. Jump in 30 seconds. As the countdown reached 0, space around the fleet seemed to twist and fold. 47 human warships vanished from the Wolf 359 system, racing through the dimensions toward a distant star system where innocent people waited to die. During the 18-hour journey through hyperspace, Stone reviewed everything they knew about the situation. The Altrians seemed genuinely peaceful, a species that had never developed significant military technology because they had never needed it. They reminded him of humans from centuries ago, before Earth's wars had forced them to become warriors. The Kraviks were different. Their technology was designed for intimidation and capture rather than straight warfare. They were used to fighting helpless victims, not trained soldiers with modern weapons. "Sir," said Communications Officer Bell, "we're receiving updated intelligence from the monitoring station. The Kravik fleet has reached the Altrian ship." Stone felt his jaw tighten. "Any word on casualties?" "Unknown, sir. But we're detecting boarding pod launches. They're moving to capture the ship intact." "That gives us time," Stone said. "Slavers want live prisoners, not corpses. They'll try to keep the Altrians alive until they can transport them." "How much time, sir?" Stone looked at the navigation display. "We'll be there in 2 hours. Signal all ships to prepare for immediate combat upon arrival." Throughout the fleet, human crews made final preparations for battle. Weapon systems came online, targeting computers synchronized. Marines loaded their assault rifles. They were going to fight aliens they had never seen to rescue other aliens they had never met, and every single one of them knew it was the right thing to do. Smoke filled the corridors of the Altrian colony ship as Kravik warriors stormed through the breached hull. Nira crouched behind an overturned table in the main corridor, listening to the sounds of her people screaming as the raiders dragged them from their hiding places. The boarding had been swift and brutal, exactly what everyone expected from the notorious slavers. Commander Rex, the leader of the Kravik fleet, stood nearly 3 meters tall with scales that gleamed like black metal. His warriors moved through the ship with practiced efficiency, stunning anyone who resisted and herding the survivors into cargo holds for transport. To them, this was just another profitable day of work. "Sector 7 is secure," reported one of his lieutenants through the comm system. "We have approximately 800 prisoners ready for transport." Rex nodded with satisfaction. Altrians were valuable slaves because they were intelligent enough for technical work, but too peaceful to cause trouble. This single ship would bring enough profit to fund his fleet for months. "What about the bridge crew?" he asked, still holding out in the command section. "Should we blast through?" "No," Rex replied. "We need the navigation computers intact. Use gas grenades. I want them alive." As his warriors prepared to assault the bridge, Rex allowed himself a moment of pride. 12 ships under his command, thousands of successful raids, and a reputation that made entire star systems pay tribute rather than risk his attention. Life was good when you were strong enough to take what you wanted. That was when space itself seemed to explode with light. Through the ship's external cameras, Rex watched in shock as 47 unknown warships materialized out of hyperspace. In perfect formation, they were unlike anything in his military databases, sleek and predatory with weapon arrays that spoke of pure aggressive intent. "Unknown vessels. This is Commander Rex of the Kravik Empire," he broadcast on all frequencies. "You are interfering with a legal salvage operation. Withdraw immediately or face destruction." The response came back within seconds, transmitted simultaneously to both fleets. "This is Admiral Stone of the Human Third Fleet," said a calm, cold voice. "To the Altrian vessel, we received your distress call and are here to provide assistance. To the Kravik forces, you will cease all hostile actions immediately and withdraw from this system. This is your only warning." Rex felt his scales ripple with anger. These unknown aliens dared to threaten him. His fleet had terrorized the Outer Rim for decades. No one challenged the Kraviks and lived to tell about it. "I am Commander Rex," he snarled into the comm. "My warriors have conquered 100 worlds. Your pathetic fleet will burn before—" His words were cut off as one of the human ships, a sleek destroyer called Lightning, fired a single shot at a nearby asteroid. The massive rock, larger than most battleships, simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there. The next moment, there was only expanding dust and debris. Rex stared at his tactical display in disbelief. That level of firepower was beyond anything he had ever seen. The weapon that destroyed the asteroid could have vaporized his entire flagship without effort. "That was a demonstration," Admiral Stone continued. Your ships will withdraw now, or they will share that asteroid's fate. Around Rex, his bridge crew looked nervous for the first time in years. These humans had appeared without warning, moved with impossible precision, and just casually demonstrated the ability to destroy planets. This was not what they had signed up for when they chose the life of raiders. But Rex had not become a successful pirate by backing down from threats. His reputation depended on never showing weakness, never retreating in the face of opposition. If word spread that he had fled from an unknown enemy, his authority would crumble and rival commanders would challenge his leadership. All ships, attack formation, he ordered. These humans want a fight. We'll give them one they'll never forget. Aboard the human flagship Retribution, Admiral Stone watched the Kravik ships begin to move into an aggressive pattern. Captain Torres shook his head in amazement. They're actually going to fight us, he said. After we just vaporized an asteroid to show them what our weapons can do, Stone sighed. Some species just don't learn. Signal all ships. Combat Formation Alpha. Rules of engagement are free fire on any Kravik vessel that shows hostile intent. What about the civilian ship? Rescue teams are already prepping for launch. The moment we neutralize the boarding parties, we go in and start saving lives. Through the communication system, they could hear frantic voices from the Altrian ship. Talo, their communications officer, was broadcasting in broken standard language. Human. Ships, please help us. Raiders in our corridors, many people captured already. Dr. Mills, the fleet xenobiologist, stepped forward. Admiral, I should point out that this is humanity's first contact with both of these species. Our actions here will determine how they view us for generations. Stone nodded grimly. Then let's make sure they understand exactly who we are. Captain Torres, signal the fleet. Show these Kraviks why humans don't tolerate slavers. The human ships moved with a coordination that seemed impossible to outside observers. Where the Kravik fleet advanced in a loose formation designed to intimidate weaker opponents, the humans flowed through space like a school of predatory fish, each ship knowing exactly where the others would be at any given moment. Aboard the Altrian vessel, Nira had managed to reach a sealed observation deck where she could see the approaching battle. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she watched the two fleets close on each other and felt her breath catch in her throat. The human ships were beautiful in a deadly way, all curves and angles designed for maximum efficiency in combat. They moved like they were alive, like they wanted to fight. Their weapons were already tracking targets, ready to unleash destruction on a scale she had never imagined. The Kravik fleet looked clumsy by comparison. Their ships were built for intimidation, rather than actual combat, designed to frighten civilian populations into surrender. Against an enemy that clearly had no intention of surrendering, they looked suddenly vulnerable. "This is Admiral Stone to all Kravik vessels," came the calm human voice over the communication system. "Final warning. Withdraw now or face the consequences. Commander." Rex's response was predictably aggressive. "All ships, open fire! Show these humans what happens when they interfere with the Kravik Empire." The Kravik fleet unleashed everything they had, dozens of energy beams and missile salvos racing across space toward the human formation. It was an impressive display of firepower that would have reduced most enemies to scrap metal in seconds. The human response was even more impressive. Every incoming shot was either deflected by energy shields or destroyed by point defense systems. The human ships flowed through the attack like it was nothing more than a gentle rain, their formation never wavering, their advance never slowing. And then, they fired back. Nira had to shield her eyes as space filled with light. The human weapons didn't just hit their targets, they obliterated them. Kravik ships that had terrorized the outer rim for years vanished in brilliant explosions or broke apart under precisely aimed shots that targeted their engines and weapons systems. It wasn't even a battle. It was an execution. Within 10 minutes, half the Kravik fleet was destroyed or disabled. Commander Rex found himself staring at tactical displays that showed his mighty armada reduced to burning wreckage and helpless hulks drifting in space. "Surrender," came Admiral Stone's voice, still calm and controlled. "Surrender now, and your remaining crews will be allowed to leave in escape pods." Rex's pride warred with his survival instincts. Finally, survival won. "All remaining ships, cease fire," he ordered with bitter defeat in his voice. "Prepare for evacuation." As Kravik warriors abandoned their ships and fled in escape pods, human marines were already boarding the Altrian vessel to begin rescue operations. Inside the damaged Altrian colony ship, chaos ruled the corridors. Kravik warriors dragged struggling prisoners toward their boarding craft, while emergency lights flickered overhead. The raiders had been systematically working their way through the vessel, stunning anyone who resisted and hauling away valuable captives. But now, everything changed. The first human marines came through the breached hull like a force of nature. They moved in perfect coordination, their black combat suits making them nearly invisible in the dim emergency lighting. Unlike the towering, intimidating Kraviks, these humans were smaller and seemed almost fragile by comparison. That illusion lasted exactly 3 seconds. The lead Kravik warrior turned toward the approaching Marines and raised his weapon, confident that these small aliens would pose no threat to his superior size and strength. The human Marine didn't even slow down. A single shot from her pulse rifle dropped the 3-meter-tall raider instantly, his body hitting the deck with a crash that echoed through the corridor. More Kraviks rushed forward, expecting easy prey. Instead, they met disciplined firepower that cut through their ranks like a blade through paper. The humans advanced steadily, their weapons firing with mechanical precision, while they coordinated their movements through silent hand signals. Chief Medical Officer Walsh followed close behind the combat teams, her medics already treating wounded. Altrians who had been abandoned by their captors. She had seen combat before, but never like this. The Marines moved through the ship with a cold efficiency that spoke of extensive training and absolute confidence in their abilities. "Sector 4 cleared," reported Sergeant Miller through the comm system. 17 civilians recovered, minor. Injuries only. "Sector 7 cleared," came another voice. 23 prisoners freed, medical assistance required. Admiral Stone monitored the boarding operation from Retribution's bridge, while simultaneously directing the space battle outside. Through the tactical display, he could see the remaining Kravik ships trying to escape, but human fighters were already moving to intercept them. "Sir, the Kravik commander is requesting terms for surrender," reported Communications Officer Bell. Stone's expression never changed. "Tell Commander Rex that surrender was offered 10 minutes ago. He chose to fight instead. Now he gets to live, with the consequences." Outside the Altrian ship, the space battle continued with devastating results for the Kravik fleet. Captain Torres led the main assault from his heavy cruiser Thunderbolt, coordinating strikes that picked apart enemy vessels with surgical precision. The Kraviks had expected to intimidate their opponents with superior numbers and aggressive posturing. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that treated warfare as a science. Human ships moved in patterns that seemed almost choreographed, each vessel supporting the others in a complex dance of destruction. Where Kravik shots went wide or struck ineffective targets, human weapons found critical systems with every shot. Engines exploded, weapon arrays went dark, and command bridges vanished in brilliant flashes of light. Commander Rex watched his fleet die from the bridge of his flagship Dominator. Around him, his officers called out damage reports in increasingly panicked voices. They had entered this battle expecting easy victory against unknown aliens. Instead, they were being systematically dismantled by an enemy that fought like they had been born for war. "Direct hit on the port engine array," shouted his tactical officer. "We're losing power across all systems." Rex snarled in frustration. His ship, which had struck fear into the hearts of countless victims, was being torn apart by weapons he didn't understand, wielded by aliens he had never heard of. The humans fought with a combination of advanced technology and tactical brilliance. that made his raiders look like primitive barbarians. "All remaining ships, full retreat," he ordered. "Emergency jump to hyperspace." But it was too late. Human fighters had already disabled most of his fleet's jump drives with precisely aimed shots. The few ships that could still maneuver found themselves surrounded by human vessels that seemed to anticipate their every move. Aboard the Altrian colony ship, Chief Walsh worked frantically to treat civilians who had been injured during the boarding. Many showed signs of the neurological weapons the Kraviks used to subdue prisoners, leaving them confused and disoriented. Her medical teams moved through the corridors with practiced efficiency, stabilizing patients and preparing them for transport to the human hospital ships. "Doctor, you need to see this," called one of her medics from deeper in the ship. Walsh followed the voice to a cargo hold that had been converted into a makeshift prison. Inside, she found nearly 200 Altrian civilians huddled together, in terror. They were mostly families with children, elderly individuals, and scientists who had never expected to face anything more dangerous than equipment failures. The sight filled her with a cold rage that surprised her with its intensity. These were innocent people who had been seeking nothing more than a new home among the stars. The Kraviks had planned to drag them away from their families and sell them like livestock to mining operations in distant systems. "Get me a direct line to Admiral Stone," she ordered. When the connection opened, her voice was steady but filled with barely controlled anger. "Admiral, you need to know what we found down here. They weren't just raiding for supplies. This was a full-scale slaving operation. Families separated, children traumatized, elderly people left to die because they weren't valuable enough to transport." Stone's voice came back cold as space itself. "Understood, Doctor. Continue the rescue operation. Signal Captain Torres to show no mercy to any Kravik vessel that continues to resist." The message was transmitted to all human ships, and the already one-sided battle became an absolute rout. Human commanders who had been following rules of engagement designed to minimize casualties suddenly found themselves with new orders. The gloves came off. Kravik ships that might have been allowed to surrender found themselves targeted for complete destruction instead. Escape pods launching from disabled vessels were tracked and herded toward human prison ships rather than being allowed to flee. Commander Rex's empire, built on the suffering of innocent people, was being systematically erased from existence. Engineer Ross worked alongside Altrian technical staff to restore the colony ship's critical systems. The humans shared their technology freely, showing the grateful aliens how to repair damaged components and improve their ship's defensive capabilities. It was remarkable how quickly the two species were able to work together, despite having never met before. "Your people are incredible," said Talo, the Altrian communications officer, as he watched human technicians repair his equipment with casual expertise. "We sent out a distress call hoping someone might help us. We never imagined anyone would risk their entire fleet to save strangers." Ross smiled as he connected the final power coupling. "That's just who we are. When someone calls for help against bullies and killers, humans answer. It's what makes us human." Through the ship's restored communication system, they could hear Admiral Stone coordinating the final phase of the battle. Kravik resistance was crumbling as their remaining ships either surrendered or were destroyed. The raiders who had terrorized the Outer Rim for decades were learning what it meant to face an enemy that refused to be intimidated. "This is the human vessel Lightning to all surviving Kravik ships," came Captain Ross's voice over the general. "Frequency. You have 30 seconds to power down all weapons and prepare for boarding. Any ship that fails to comply will be destroyed." One by one, the surviving Kravik vessels went dark. Their crews, faces with the reality that their reign of terror was over, prepared for capture by an enemy they had vastly underestimated. Commander Rex, his flagship crippled and surrounded, made his final transmission as the commander of a Kravik raiding fleet. "All ships, cease resistance. This is Rex, final command. Surrender to the humans." The Battle of Kepler Junction was over. Humanity had announced its presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible, and the message was clear. They protected the innocent and destroyed those who preyed on the helpless. 2 days after the battle, the Altrian colony ship hummed with restored life. Human engineering teams had worked around the clock to repair the massive vessel, sharing advanced technology that would have taken the Altrians decades to develop on their own. The corridors that had echoed with screams and weapons fire now buzzed with the sounds of construction and the laughter of children who were finally safe. Nira stood in her restored command center, watching through the main viewing screen as human ships maintained protective formation around her vessel. She still could not quite believe what had happened. When they sent out that desperate distress call, she had never imagined that help would come in the form of an entire war fleet willing to fight strangers to protect other strangers. Admiral Stone materialized on her main screen as the communication link activated. Even through the translator, she could hear the warmth in his voice as he spoke. "Captain Nira, how are your people doing?" "Better than we ever dared hope," she replied honestly. "Your medical teams have treated all our wounded. Your engineers have not only repaired our ship, but improved it beyond our original specifications. We have food, clean air, and working engines. But more than that, we have hope again." Stone nodded. "I'm glad to hear it. We've also taken the liberty of installing some defensive systems on your ship. Nothing too advanced, just enough to help. You deal with pirates and raiders until you reach your destination." Nira felt tears forming in her eyes. These humans had saved her people, repaired their ship, treated their wounded, and now they were giving them weapons to defend themselves. All for strangers they had never met before. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Why did you do all this for us?" Stone was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said finally. "Because when someone calls for help against murderers and slavers, you answer that call. Because protecting innocent people is more important than your own safety. But we're not even the same species. We have nothing to offer you in return." "You're wrong about that," Stone replied. "You've already given us something very valuable." "What?" "The knowledge that there are still good people in the galaxy worth protecting." Throughout the ship, human personnel continued their work alongside grateful Altrians. In the medical bay, Dr. Walsh supervised the final treatment of civilians who had been injured during the Kravik assault. Many of them were children who had been terrified by the attack, and her staff had worked patiently to help them overcome their trauma. "The neural disruptor effects should fade completely within another day," she explained to worried Altrian parents. "Your children will be fine. They're remarkably resilient." One small Altrian child, no older than 6 in human terms, tugged on Walsh's medical coat. "Are the bad people gone?" she asked in simple standard language. Walsh knelt down to the child's level. "Yes, sweetheart, the bad people are gone and they're never coming back. The human ships will make sure you're safe. Will you come with us to our new home?" Walsh smiled. "We can't come with you, but we're giving you something special. Communication. Beacons that will let you talk to us anytime you need help. If bad people ever threaten you again, just call us and we'll come running." In the engineering sections, human technicians worked alongside Altrian maintenance crews, sharing knowledge and techniques that would serve the colonists well in their new home. Chief Engineer Ross found himself impressed by how quickly the aliens learned and how eager they were to understand the technology that had saved their lives. "Your people are natural engineers," he told his Altrian counterpart. "Give you a few years to study our designs, and you'll probably improve them beyond what we thought possible." "We owe you our lives," the Altrian replied. "Anything we learn, anything we develop, we will share with humanity freely." Ross shook his head. "You don't owe us anything. Just live well and be happy. That's payment enough." On the bridge, Captain Torres reviewed the final preparations for the Altrian ship's departure. The massive colony vessel was now better equipped than when it had started its journey, with improved engines, stronger shields, and defensive weapons that would deter most pirates. More importantly, it carried communication beacons that would ensure the colonists could contact humanity if they ever faced danger again. "All systems are green," reported the Altrian navigation officer. "We're ready to resume our journey to Kepler 7. Torres nodded approvingly. "You should reach your destination in 6 days. The route we've plotted will take you through sectors with regular patrol coverage. You shouldn't encounter any more raiders." Through the communication system, they could hear Admiral Stone addressing the entire Altrian population. His words were being translated into their language and broadcast throughout the ship. "People of the Altrian colony ship Harmony's Dream, this is Admiral Stone of the Human Third Fleet. In a few hours, you will resume your journey to your new home world. You carry with you our hopes for your success and our promise of friendship. The galaxy can be a dangerous place, but it is also full of wonders waiting to be discovered. Live well, explore boldly, and remember that you are never alone among the stars." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of Altrian voices rose in their traditional song of gratitude, a harmonious melody that filled the communication channels and brought tears to the eyes of listening humans. It was a sound unlike anything the human crews had ever heard, beautiful and haunting and filled with genuine emotion. Dr. Mills, the fleet xenobiologist, was documenting everything for his first contact report. This mission had exceeded every expectation for peaceful contact with new species. Not only had they successfully communicated with 2 different alien races, but they had demonstrated humanity's values in the most dramatic way possible. "This changes everything," he told Admiral Stone during their final briefing. "Word of what happened here will spread throughout the galaxy. Other species will want to know more about us." Stone looked thoughtful. "Are you ready for that? Having the entire galaxy suddenly interested in humanity?" "I think the better question is whether the galaxy is ready for us," Mills replied. "We just proved that humans will travel across space to fight strangers in order to protect other strangers. That's going to make a lot of people very nervous." "Good," Stone said firmly. "Bullies and tyrants should be nervous. Innocent people should feel safer knowing we exist." As the Altrian ship prepared for departure, several young Altrians approached human personnel with an unexpected request. They wanted to join the human fleet as cultural liaisons and students, hoping to learn more about the species that had saved their people. Captain Walsh interviewed the volunteers personally. They were scientists, engineers, and communication specialists who were willing to leave their families and colony ship to serve aboard human vessels. Their enthusiasm was infectious, and their desire to help build bridges between species was genuine. "Are you sure about this?" she asked one young volunteer named Kira. "You'll be traveling with military ships, visiting dangerous areas of space? This isn't going to be a peaceful research mission." Kira nodded seriously. "My people were saved because humans were willing to fight for strangers. If I can help humans save other innocent people, then that's what I want to do with my life." Similar conversations were taking place throughout the fleet. Word of the battle had already begun spreading through galactic communication networks, carried by Kravik survivors and Altrian traders. Other peaceful species were beginning to reach out, cautiously sending messages to the mysterious Deathworlders who had defeated one of the most feared raider fleets in the Outer Rim. Admiral Stone read through the messages as they arrived, requests for trade agreements, diplomatic contact, and in some cases, direct pleas for military assistance against various threats. It seemed that humanity's demonstration of power and principles had attracted attention from across the galaxy. "Sir," reported Communications Officer Bell, "we're receiving a priority message from Earth Command. They want a full report on our first contact procedures and our rules of engagement with non-human forces." Stone smiled grimly. "Tell them we followed standard humanitarian protocols. When innocent people called for help, we provided it. When slavers threatened civilian populations, we eliminated the threat. Simple as that. They're also asking about our long-term diplomatic strategy for dealing with alien governments. Our strategy is the same as it's always been, Stone replied. We protect the innocent, we defend the helpless, and we eliminate threats to peaceful people regardless of their species. If that makes us friends with some governments and enemies with others, so be it. As the Altrian colony ship finally departed for its new home, escorted by a squadron of human destroyers, Admiral Stone stood on the bridge of retribution, watching them disappear into hyperspace. Around him, his crew prepared for the journey, back to human space. But they all knew that things had changed forever. Humanity was no longer an isolated species on the edge of the galaxy. They had announced their presence and their principles to the entire galactic community. They had shown that they possessed both the power to destroy and the wisdom to protect. Most importantly, they had proven that the label Deathworlders was both accurate and misleading. Yes, humans brought death, but only to those who threatened the innocent. The Third Fleet turned toward home, carrying with them new allies, new responsibilities, and the knowledge that their role in galactic affairs had fundamentally changed. Behind them, they left a clear message that would echo throughout the stars. Humanity stood ready to defend those who could not defend themselves, regardless of species, regardless of cost. The galaxy would never be the same. Months later, the story of the Battle of Kepler Junction had become legend among peaceful species throughout the Outer Rim. Trading ships carried tales of the mysterious human fleet that had appeared from nowhere to fight impossible odds for strangers. Colonial governments quietly began sending diplomatic messages toward human space, hoping to establish contact with these powerful new protectors. And in the darker corners of the galaxy, predatory species that had built their empires on fear and violence began to reassess their expansion plans. The age of unchallenged aggression was over. Somewhere among the stars, a species existed that would fight back, and they fought like demons defending angels. The humans had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same.